Another important concept, if at all it is not very much related to your exam point of view. So look here, the magnitude of and CV into delta T. So the magnitude of delta U, delta H, and W, they are depending upon the magnitude of delta T in this particular case. And the delta T is directly proportional to the nature of the process, which is whether it is reversible or irreversible. And all these derivations and how to relate the initial and the final temperature with initial and the final volume, and also it with the initial and the final temperature with the initial and the final pressures we have seen already. And also we have also discussed irreversible adiabatic expansion. In the case of irreversible adiabatic expansion, work done is a zero, internal energy change is a zero, and temperature change is zero, and also enthalpy change is also zero. So for ideal gases, internal energy is a function of temperature only. So this is in the case of intermediate expansion, that also we have seen, and we have related that CV into T2 minus T1 is equal to P external into RT1 by P1 minus RT2 by P2, which is equal to RP external, where P1, P2 have taken as a common factor, T1, P2 minus T2, P1. This up to this. Today, we are going to compare isothermal and adiabatic reversible expansions. See, P1 V1 is equal to P isothermal and V final. And P1 V1 power gamma, I have already told you what is gamma. Gamma is the ratio between Cp and Cv of a gas, which is always greater than 1 for all gases, because Cp is always greater than Cv. So the ratio is always greater than 1. So for adiabatic expansion, P1 V1 power gamma is equal to adiabatic pressure into the final volume power gamma. Taking the first equation, you can write V final divided by V1 is equal to P1 divided by isothermal pressure. Similarly, from the second equation, V final by V1 whole power gamma is equal to P1 divided by adiabatic pressure. In the case of expansion, Vf is always greater than V1, and also for all the gases, gamma is greater than 1. Therefore, I can write Vf by V1 power gamma is always greater than Vf by V1, which means that P1 by P adiabatic is greater than P1 by P isothermal. So I can write the adiabatic pressure is always less than the isothermal pressure. The reason is, in the case of adiabatic expansion, there is a fall in the temperature. See, in the very main condition for adiabatic process is there should not be any energy exchange. The Q is equal to 0. So when a gas is expanding in adiabatic condition, the temperature of the system falls down. So as the temperature decreases, automatically at a constant volume, pressure is directly related to temperature. So fall in the temperature naturally makes there is a fall in the pressure also. That is why adiabatic pressure is always less than isothermal pressure. You can see here, see, when you plot pressure versus volume, this is initial volume, this is final volume. If you take the isothermal process, it goes like this. So there is a pressure change like this. When you take the adiabatic process, there is a pressure change like this. Actually, the pressure change is supposed to be here, but because of the adiabatic condition, there is a drop in temperature and a corresponding pressure decrease is much faster when you compare the change in pressure in the isothermal process. So the pressure changes like this. That is why the pressure of isothermal process final stage is here and adiabatic process is here. Actually, the work done is the area below the curve. Look here, the dotted area is the work done in the isothermal process. Shaded area is the work done in the adiabatic process. Similarly, if you take pressure, the final pressure, a constant one for both adiabatic and isothermal process. If you measure the volume change, the isothermal volume is here, adiabatic volume is here. The same pressure volume curve, but here the initial volume and the final volume are the same for adiabatic and isothermal process, and we have seen what is the final pressures. In the case of the second curve, we keep the final pressure the same for isothermal and adiabatic. See, it is the final pressure. And we want to measure the corresponding adiabatic volume and isothermal volume. You can look at this derivation. P1 V1 is equal to PF into V isothermal, and P1 V1 power gamma is equal to PF into V adiabatic. Similarly, P1 by PF is equal to V isothermal by V1. So P1 by P1 is equal to V adiabatic by V1 per whole power gamma. When you relate this, isothermal volume by V1, adiabatic volume by V1 whole power gamma, if you take logarithm, Ln isothermal volume by V1 is equal to gamma into Ln adiabatic volume by V1. So here the gamma is always greater than 1. So adiabatic volume by V1 is less than isothermal volume by V1. So V1 is a common, therefore adiabatic volume is less than isothermal volume. Again, the same discussion can be shown for this change also. During the adiabatic expansion, there is a drop in the pressure, drop in the temperature. And according to Charles' law, at a constant pressure, volume is directly proportional to temperature. Therefore, the drop in the temperature makes a drop in the volume also. That is why isothermal volume is greater and adiabatic volume is smaller. Now you look, this is another important discussion. Various enthalpies of reactions. The first enthalpy that we are going to study is the enthalpy of combustion. What is this enthalpy of combustion? At a given temperature, the enthalpy change accompanying the complete combustion of 1 mole of the substance at that temperature. First of all, you are fixing a temperature, and at that temperature, you are burning completely 1 mole of the substance, and you are measuring the enthalpy change. The enthalpy change accompanying the complete combustion of 1 mole of the substance at a particular temperature is the enthalpy of a combustion. Say, for example, if you take methane, 1 mole of methane, and supply oxygen, you are burning, and what you are getting is carbon dioxide and water. and the enthalpy change is minus 890.3 kilojoule per mole. Similarly, if you take hydrogen gas and combine with oxygen gas, 1 mole of hydrogen gas is taken, which is burnt, and water is formed. The enthalpy change is minus 286.2 kilojoule per mole. But it all depends upon the physical state of the substances taken. Say, for example, if hydrogen is burnt at 25 degrees centigrade, the product will be liquid water. At that condition, the enthalpy change is minus 286.2 kilojoule. But if the same reaction is carried out at 100 degrees centigrade, where water will exist in vapor state, then the enthalpy change accompanying the combustion is a minus 245.5 kilojoule. So this clearly shows that it depends upon the temperature at which the reaction is carried out and also the physical state of the substances taken. And the second enthalpy is enthalpy of neutralization. Again, at a given temperature, the enthalpy change accompanying the neutralization of 1 gram equivalent of the acid by a base in dilute solutions at that temperature is called enthalpy of neutralization. See, actually here what we are doing, we take 1 gram equivalent of an acid which is neutralized using a dilute solution of a base. What is the enthalpy change? So this is the enthalpy change accompanying neutralization of an acid. A similar definition can be written for the neutralization of a base. But you have to change the definition at a given temperature. The delta H accompanying the neutralization of 1 gram equivalent of the base by an acid in dilute solutions is called neutralization of the base, enthalpy of neutralization of the base. Normally, if you neutralize a strong acid and a strong base at 25 degrees centigrade, we are getting the enthalpy change value minus 57.32 kilojoule per mole. Why? For almost all the strong acids and the strong bases, we are getting the same value. You can take a hydrochloric acid, you can take nitric acid, you can take sulfuric acid, all strong acids. You can take a sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, lithium hydroxide, all strong bases. So whatever may be the strong acid or a strong base, the neutralization enthalpy change is found to be minus 57.32 kilojoule, irrespective of the other cation which is present or anion present. See, in the case of acid, you can change the anion, Cl minus, Br minus, or F minus, or something like this. In the case of base, you can change the cation like sodium plus, potassium plus, or lithium plus, something like this. But ultimately, if you are able to find out the enthalpy of neutralization of a strong acid and a strong base, it is always found to be minus 57.32 kilojoule. The reason is here. You write the reaction like this: H plus plus Cl minus plus, see, HCl is written like this because the very definition for the strong electrolyte is that it exists in ionized form even in concentrated solutions. It is existing in ionized form even in the concentrated solutions means here the definition itself says that we are taking dilute solutions. So on dilution, it is expected that all the molecules are existing in the ionized form. So the hydrochloric acid, it is not existing in the molecular form. It is existing in the ionized form, which is already completely dissociated, and the ions present in the system are H plus and Cl minus. Similarly, sodium hydroxide, as it is a strong electrolyte, it also exists in solution as Na plus and OH minus. So on the right hand side, you are getting the product Na plus Cl minus plus water. See, the Na plus and the Cl minus which were existing in the ionic form on the left hand side, they are existing in the same manner Na plus and Cl minus on the right hand side also, which shows that this cation Na plus and this anion Cl minus, they are not at all involving in the chemical combination. So the only combination which is taking place here is the combination of H plus and OH minus to form water molecule. That is why whatever may be the cation or whatever may be the anion, the final reaction is mere the combination of H plus and OH minus to form water. That is why the enthalpy of neutralization of a strong acid by a strong base should be identical for strong electrolytes. If acid or base is weak, then a part of the energy has to be used for dissociation. Say, for example, I am taking acetic acid, which is a weak electrolyte. That is why I have put a reversible sign here, which shows that the dissociation is taking place. Simultaneously, the association is also taking place. So, the dissociated these ions, they combine to give back the undissociated acetic acid molecule. But when you combine this with the sodium hydroxide, which is a strong electrolyte, the strong electrolyte is always existing in the ionized form as Na plus and OH minus. And here also, the ultimate reaction is H plus plus OH minus to form water. But this time, the enthalpy change is minus 55.23 kilojoule per mole. So the difference plus 2.09 kilojoule is the enthalpy of dissociation of acetic acid. Because acetic acid molecule is not readily existing in the dissociated form. It tries to dissociate, but it is not breaking up. So some amount of energy has to be spent to break it up, to dissociate, to produce H plus ions. That energy is vanishing in the overall enthalpy change of neutralization, and that energy is used up for the dissociation of the acetic acid molecule. Similarly, if you use a strong acid and a weak base, say for example, hydrochloric acid I am taking, which is existing in the dissociated form in the dilute solutions, which is already completely dissociated as it is a strong electrolyte, and you are taking ammonium hydroxide. This ammonium hydroxide is a weak electrolyte, which will dissociate into NH4 plus and OH minus, and a simultaneous association is also taking place. So here also the ultimate reaction is the H plus combining with OH minus to form water molecule. But a little amount of energy is used for the dissociation of ammonium hydroxide molecule. So the difference in this case, the actual enthalpy of neutralization is found to be minus 51.34 kilojoule. So the difference plus 5.98 kilojoule is corresponding to the enthalpy of dissociation of ammonium hydroxide molecule. So from the entire thing you have to understand, when you take a strong acid and a strong base, you are getting a constant value of minus 57.32 kilojoule per mole as the enthalpy of neutralization. But when any one of the acid or the base is weak, then a little amount of energy has to be spent for the dissociation of the weak electrolyte. Therefore, there is an overall decrease in the enthalpy of neutralization of weak electrolytes. That is why in the case of acetic acid sodium hydroxide reaction, it is found to be minus 55.23 kilojoule, and the difference plus 2.09 kilojoule is the enthalpy of dissociation. But in the case of hydrochloric acid and ammonium hydroxide, it is minus 51.34 kilojoule, and the difference plus 5.98 kilojoule is the enthalpy of dissociation of ammonium hydroxide. And another enthalpy is enthalpy of a solution. So enthalpy of solution is the enthalpy change per mole of a enthalpy change observed per mole of a solute when it is dissolved in a pure solvent to give a solution of a specific concentration. So this is called the enthalpy of a solution. Say for example, I am taking potassium chloride solid and it is dissolved in 200 molecules of water, and what you are getting is a solution, the potassium chloride with 200 molecules of water, and the enthalpy change accompanying this is plus 18.58 kilojoule. And when you take a hydrochloric acid and again you add 200 molecules of water, the enthalpy change is minus 72.90 kilojoule. Sometimes the heat is evolved during the formation of hydrates. See, some anhydrous substances. What are anhydrous substances? The substances which do not have any water molecule. When the anhydride substances get hydrated, there is a heat evolution. And the heat evolved during the formation of hydrates. It is called the enthalpy of hydration of the salt. And the other enthalpy is enthalpy of precipitation. You can see this enthalpy of precipitation like this. It is the heat evolved in the precipitation of 1 mole of a sparingly soluble substance on mixing dilute solutions of suitable electrolytes. And below that you can see the example. I am taking barium chloride in aqueous solution form and also sodium sulfate in aqueous solution form. When I mix these two solutions, I am getting the white precipitate of barium sulfate. Now the enthalpy change accompanying this particular reaction is the enthalpy of precipitation. But if you look at the reaction carefully, on the left hand side it is Ba2 plus Cl minus, Na plus SO4 2 minus. On the right hand side, BaSO4 as an undissociated precipitate plus Na plus Cl minus. Similarly, as we discussed in the case of enthalpy of neutralization, on the left hand side, Na plus Cl minus are there. On the right hand side also, Na plus Cl minus are there. Therefore, the combination actually has taken place between barium 2 plus aqueous and SO4 2 minus aqueous. So the barium 2 plus aqueous and SO4 2 minus aqueous, they have combined to give barium sulfate solid. So the ions which are existing in the aqueous medium, they combine to give a salt in the solid phase. Now the enthalpy change accompanying such a reaction is called enthalpy of precipitation. Delta H is equal to minus 19.50 kilojoule in this case. And the other one is enthalpy of formation. There are so many enthalpies. Enthalpy of neutralization, enthalpy of crystallization, enthalpy of a transition, enthalpy of a formation. Number for any change, for anything, any chemical change or physical change, you can think of the enthalpy change. So enthalpy of a formation, it is the enthalpy change accompanying the formation of 1 mole of the compound from its elements. See, for example, if you take a carbon atom, oxygen atoms, and combine to form carbon dioxide, the enthalpy change is found to be minus 393.5 kilojoule. Similarly, for water molecule, it is minus 286.2 kilojoule. But there is one more enthalpy of formation called standard enthalpy of formation. So this standard enthalpy of formation, actually, when you take the substances in the standard state, a naturally existing state at 25 degrees centigrade and 1 atmospheric pressure. Normally, in order to calculate the enthalpy of a formation, the enthalpy of free element at 25 degrees centigrade and 1 atmospheric pressure is arbitrarily fixed at 0. And the delta HF, which is the formation, if it is negative, then the compounds are called exothermic compounds. If it is positive, then the compounds are called endothermic compounds. Now, You have already seen that when you supply heat to a thermodynamic process, the heat that is supplied is a Q. If it is at a constant volume, it is called QV. So QV is equal to delta U. You know that when volume is maintained constant, the energy supplied increases only the internal energy. But when the energy is supplied at a constant pressure condition, it increases both internal energy and a little bit of work is also done. So change in internal energy and the work done together, we name it enthalpy change, which is also another state function. So that is why here it is related delta U is equal to QV, that is heat energy supplied at a constant volume, where enthalpy change is equal to QP, that is the heat energy supplied at a constant pressure condition. We have already derived this relation between delta H and delta U. Delta H is equal to delta U plus P into delta V. So this equation can be written as QP is equal to QV plus P into delta V. So P into delta V is equal to nRT, where R is a constant and the temperature we are not changing actually. So it can be written as delta N, only the number of moles is changed. So delta N RT for a reaction. So QP is equal to QV plus delta N RT. So this is what is the relation that we are arriving at. So tomorrow we are going to see what is how the enthalpy changes with the temperature, which is called Kirchhoff's equation. And then just a minute.